I didn't want to be just a film lawyer or just a rights lawyer or just a union lawyer or just a IP lawyer. I wanted all of it. And so I take this job at Mattel to help them build the beginnings of their entertainment division, which was where the Barbie direct-to-video started, some Hot Wheels. The talent exposure you have in a major studio at my level was pretty big. The people that do, these deals with Clint Eastwood and Joel Silver, like these kind of big names.
I think one of the things that I could even just commend you and compliment you for is just your confidence.
Why should I be having limitations on anything I do? Now, am I 6'4"? Can I hit a 130-mile-an-hour serve? Absolutely not. Do I get on a court and tell myself I am 6'4" and I'm going to hit 100%?
I have a very, very special guest today, Mr. Peter Steckelman, who is the Senior Vice President of Business and Legal Affairs at the Tennis Channel. Very, very unique experience of a wide variety, whether it's working at Mattel, Warner Brothers, Konami, a wide variety of experience here. And we're fortunate enough to have him join us to share his incredible experience in the law. So, Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mo, for having me. And I'm excited to get to share some stories and some tips and some about my background and my experience in the entertainment, media, and legal spaces. And sports. Again, I can't forget sports. It's the biggest job I have.
100%. I'd love to learn about your journey into how you managed to break in, as, a lot of people,
Sure.
I'm assuming, want to get into that. So talk to me about breaking into the entertainment journey and early in your law career.
Sure. That's a terrific question. And I'll start the answer with, it was very helpful to me to have a collection of friends here in Los Angeles that some were in the business already at various levels and some were not. And the ones that I became friendlier with, usually, and ironically through recreational tennis, was a friend who got me my first job doing a due diligence project for a film library that was in bankruptcy. And our job was to look at the assets, document them, and see and kind of help make valuations as to what film X, Y, and Z and TV series X, Y, and Z was worth. And halfway through that project, I thought, and I had just been to California. I had just been in California a very short time. I don't think I had gotten my law license yet, or maybe I had just gotten licensed.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, this is kind of fun. I dig this. Look at this is like pulling, like it's like the wizard behind the curtain.
Yeah.
This is how an Oscar winner gets these things in his or her deal. This is how you get a location and rent it for 6 months while you're filming. And what does that look like? And one of the funniest things I had seen was somebody rented a house for an obscene amount of money. And one of the things they had to do was guarantee that the film company would rebuild the kitchen if the owner did not like the way they had, filmed in the kitchen. And I think there was going to be some sort of, I don't remember what the film was, but there must have been some level of destruction, crime, or something. And I thought to myself, and there was no cap on the money. I thought the least they're going to do is say up to X dollars. No, company X agrees to rebuild person X's kitchen to person X's satisfaction in consideration for this rent. I'm sorry, for this location agreement.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, okay, I thought two things. One, that's crazy. Actually, three things. Two, now I want to know why the film company is in bankruptcy. And three, I don't want to be reading about these deals. I want to do these deals.
Wow.
I want to negotiate these deals. And that was my kind of like aha moment as a junior kind of, I wouldn't even call it a paralegal level analyst. I was documenting, I was reading and writing, look for the, what the distribution rights are, what the underlying rights are. Is there a book attached? Like just kind of really being more methodical and researchy than practice of law. Mm-hmm. So I took that experience and kind of packaged it on my resume and went to some recruiters when the job ended and was able to secure a job in one of the Disney film divisions, basically telling this recruiter, I already know how to do these deals. I was I'm going to say a little more sure of myself than I probably substantively was.
That was
But I,
probably me during the New York negotiation competition. So I totally
yeah, but
understand.
no, but you sold it fine. No, you guys, your company, you guys were on it. I mean,
Thank you,
you,
thank
you
you.
have to have a little bravado. Okay, and
100%.
so I brought some bravado to this interview, and I went and I got this job working at Disney as a temp lawyer for a a division there, and I had three different kinds of deals to work on. And about halfway through this project, it was going to be maybe turn into a permanent job, and it did, thankfully, because I was doing a good job. And I asked my boss, "Can I have more to do?" He looked at me like, "What do you mean? Can you have more to do? I've given you." I'm like, "Yeah, but I want to learn more. I want to do more. I want to experience more." And so I got more to do, and over time, that gave me enough confidence and enough substantive experience where I felt like, okay, either if I stay here, that's great, or maybe I want to try something different. And I think that's where my brain kind of thought, maybe you should try something different because this is getting a little routine,
Yeah.
right? And I think part of the my aspect as a junior lawyer was I didn't want to be labeled or pigeonholed into one type of work. I didn't want to be just a film lawyer or just a rights lawyer or just a union lawyer or just a IP lawyer. I wanted all of it. I wanted to understand all of it, and I wanted to learn how it all fit together. And I thought the only way that's going to happen is if I keep expanding and keep being a little more um, assertive in my own, my own advocate. So I, wasn't able to parlay that within Disney. So my next job from that was Fox Television on the kids side with animation and some live action and some. We were doing some reality game shows at the time, which I do remember being on set, kind of supervising sponsor logos on hosts and stuff like that. Stuff you don't really think about until you think about it, right? And so I thought, this is kind of fun too. This is really, I'm enjoying this. But that organization was part of the Fox area that then became brought into Disney under, do you remember Fox Family Channel? And it
Yeah,
became like,
yeah.
and it became, um, I want to say like, what's the Disney entity that it became?
I'm,
No,
I'm,
it was Disney Family. It was Family. They
I
took
think
it,
so.
made
Yeah,
it,
I think
it's
Disney
Disney
had like
Family.
a exclusive
Yeah.
kids channel at that point, you know?
Yes, that's right. And so by that point, I was one of many. And I was and I wasn't really able to distinguish myself in a way that I thought was going to help me grow and become more of a leader. Because by this point, I kind of knew enough to be dangerous, meaning
Okay.
I could give people good advice and I could give people like leadership advice. And I could also learn more than I could give. Right. So, but I didn't know that at the time. I was still trying to, take the entertainment approach of if you don't look out for yourself, no one's going to do it for you, right? And
Yeah.
that's sort of true. It's sort of not true. It just depends. I think that's all very circumstantial. So, with that, and knowing that they were going to sell to Disney, I was able to get a job at Mattel through one of the talent that I had done a deal for. Like
Hmm.
one of the creative folks that we did an option deal to make one of his products a show, what happened to be a Mattel executive.
Wow.
And when I applied for the Mattel job, I knew nothing about how, the reporting structure, any of that. And he had called me and he said, "Hey, it's me. We did this." I was like, "Oh yeah, and you have this agent." And I said, like, I'm thinking, "Uh-oh, what's wrong with his deal? Why is he calling me?" He's like, "I'm going to be on the interview committee at Mattel, and I want to welcome." I was like, "Oh, okay, this is great." So I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay." I
Sometimes
just
when you
put
get those calls, it's like you
you
don't know what to expect.
you have to put two and two together. And so, and as I'm growing and learning, I'm learning to be a little sharper and a little more aware of my surroundings. And so I take this job at Mattel to help them build, and this is a number of years ago, to build the beginnings of their entertainment division, which was where the Barbie direct-to-video started, some Hot Wheels, Little People, Fisher Price on the Fisher Price brand, and how many years later we have the super successful Barbie movie, and now there's going to be a Hot Wheels movie. So I was at the very beginning of that. I take no credit for what happened in the late 20s, in the early 20s, but I was there at the very beginning. And through that relationship, and the work was terrific. Again, I enjoyed the work tremendously. My next opportunity came when an agent called me and said, "Hey, the person at Sony that you've been negotiating with at Mattel?" "Yes." "He's building a division over at Warner Brothers and he needs a department head. Do you want me to put your name in?" And I thought, seriously? Me? Okay. I'm thinking, all right, I must be doing something right. And I thought to myself two things. One, somebody is recognizing beyond me that I'm actually pretty good at what I do.
Mm.
And then the second thing was, don't be foolish. That's a relationship. Don't burn the relationship. So absolutely say yes, right? So you have to kind of weigh all that at the same time, unless there was some real reason, like I was locked into a long-term contract or something like that, which wasn't again on the in the con column of this conversation, right? So I took this interview with the gentleman who became my boss, and I will tell you this, Mo, and I tell this to your audience: don't do what I'm about to describe. Okay, I went
I'll
into
put a
this
warning right here.
this is my disclaimer. This will almost never work in the real world, but it worked once. I
Okay.
went in completely indifferent. I don't need this job. I don't care about this job. I don't care about what you guys are doing here. I'm here because of this relationship. All this like nonsense is in my head, and I'm kind of presenting myself as this kind of neutral, kind of, yeah, I'm capable. I can do whatever you need. And so as we finished the interview, he says to me, "Okay, you come very highly recommended, but I'm not convinced. I want you to tell me why. Don't tell me now. Think about it. Send me something and explain to me why I should hire you."
Wow.
Okay. Okay.
That's a heck of a
So
unorthodox
I thought,
approach. I'm curious.
I leave this interview thinking two things. One, how dare you, right? Because I'm so offended now. But then I thought, wait a minute. Why should he hire me? I went from personal emotional reaction to an objective executive question. And I thought, okay, I'll take the bait. And so I put together a business plan. Dear so and so, I thank you. It was in a combination of a thank you note and a business plan. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and just to tour the studio. Dot dot dot. You asked me to tell you what I could do, why I should hire you should hire me. Here's what I can bring to your organization and
Wow.
and Warner's writ large. And I put together maybe 5 bullets of what that division was doing, and then I put another 5 bullets together of how we take what those top 5 things were doing and synthesizing it with the rest of the studio to kind of take them out of the silo mode. See, the good news about my experience at Disney was I understood how studios are structured and how they work. So I understood that one part doesn't know necessarily what the other part is doing unless they need to. And that's kind of a bit of an art, not a science. And if you don't live it, you almost don't experience it. There's always those words of synergy and connective tissue within an organization, but unless you live it, it's kind of like abstract.
100%.
So I put this, and it fit on one page. I must have used small font. Or I was actually
Size 10
much more,
times New Roman, just something like
something
that.
like that. Yeah. So I get a call from the HR team saying, we need you to meet with the head of creative. We need you to meet with this one. And all of a sudden this became a real thing. So I'm like, and by the way, just so we're clear, Warner Brothers and Mattel, they're nowhere near each other geographically in LA. So I'm now having to do that whole like, I'm busy. I have a doctor's appointment. I have, that
Yeah,
whole
yeah, yeah,
that whole
100%. You
situation.
gotta like kind of set the scene a
Yeah,
little bit.
right. So I have to make sure no one's going to be looking for me in a super emergency panic meeting at 3 o'clock when 2:30 I'm rolling up to Burbank for an interview. So I go through this exercise, and they make me an offer. And at the time at Mattel, there was some management changes going on there, and my boss ended up the boss I reported to. She ended up leaving, and a new boss came in, and I probably worked for her for about 2 weeks before I was like, by the way, I'm out. I'm going to Warner Brothers because I'm going to run a department. This was my first executive job. I was going to be a
100%.
department head, and there was no way for me to turn that down. At that point in my career, growth wise, relationship wise, networking, and my ability to learn, not as one of many, but one of few.
Wow.
And so I took that opportunity. I leaned into it and I worked incredibly hard, both on the politics, the relationships, and the substantive learning. And the question you brought up earlier, and the notion of talent and how you relate to talent and representation and so forth. So this, of course, the representative, the agent that got me the job, she always thought she was going to get an extra special, something out of our negotiations. And honestly, where I could, it was appropriate, I would. But that's the way I work. I've been described by people as fair, so I try to always live up to that.
100%.
And then where I enjoyed the experience at Warner's was all kinds of, the talent exposure you have to in a major studio at my level was pretty big. Like I got invited to screenings, I got invited to meetings, I got invited to, there's certain parts of the people that do, these deals with Clint Eastwood and Joel Silver, like these kind of big names.
100%.
And all of a sudden, like there's some notion of like, I'm just one of these many executives here doing the work of generating new content for the studio and working with existing content that like the Looney Tunes library, Superman, for example, like all
100%.
of those
That's
things.
very rich IP to be just
Right.
working
And
with on a
so
daily
I'm
basis.
exposed to that. And then I get exposed to the way the studio works as far as having, because the legal side of a studio they're ostensibly a major law firm, meaning they have a litigation team, they have an employment team, they have a collective bargaining team, they have an employee relations team. They're going to have film, television, digital, all the sub platforms, distribution, international. And so when all of a sudden my piece is one part of that larger puzzle, and the consumer products, which I was very familiar with, coming out of Fox and Mattel. So where this brought me to was this level of really interesting experience where if I had like a trademark issue on a new show, I didn't call a outside counsel. I would call the trademark department and say, listen, we're going to do this. Can we search out these titles and go through that process? And if we have any issues, we would resolve them. And every so often, we had these character names on some of these shows that the way the studio's IT system worked, some parts of the studio had easier access to the internet than others, which is very strange. So the corporate legal team didn't have the best access.
Oh,
But I
wow.
was in a building somewhere which we had different IT, like I don't know, it was whether it was Time Warner or Spectrum. I
Yeah.
don't remember how it worked, but they would call me and say, "Could you run these character searches through your?" Because there was this like content block saying, this is like inappropriate content kind of thing.
100%. Yeah.
And so one of the shows that we were trying to clear, the title, the character names for all of like three of the five main characters came back as links to a shop in the UK that sold adult toys.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
and I thought the trademark team was punking me. I thought they were making me look this up because they wanted me to like, kind of like run a joke on me. But no, they were very serious, and they were
Yeah, I
like,
think
so
that's a different type of superhero. That might be.
right, 100% Mo. So when I did this, I remember laughing so hard, and I said, "So what do we do now?" And they go, "Oh no, we're going to send you a report recommending you don't. We're not going to clear these." Because first of all, you couldn't clear them. Second of all, even if you did, the adult manufacturing would cease and desist
Yeah,
us,
yeah, they
right?
would then come after you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I have to explain to two television networks that I sold the show to why we're getting cease and desist from, pornography
Yeah, yeah,
ostensibly.
yeah.
And I was like, that's just not a good look for anybody, right? So so that's one of those kind of like experiences of like that you have to live that, right? You're not going to you
Wow.
can't read about it. You got to live something like that. And then from the Warner thing, that another part of the studio world that is not going to come as a surprise given the way Paramount, Skydance, Warner Brothers Discovery, Sony, all the folks that I can mention have lived in the last 5-10 years. The studio politics, right?
Yes.
So studio politics means that sometimes relationships sour and people move on to different parts of their career.
Hmm.
And that was the case with my boss. Had that experience, and then subsequently the person that replaced him replaced all of us, all of the senior leadership of that group. And the good news for me was I had built up, again, this is going back to what I said, number one, networking. My relationships with corporate legal were strong enough that corporate legal found opportunities for me within different parts of the studio. So I worked for corporate business development. These are what where the folks that at Warner's figure out how to invest in certain things. Like, do I want to buy out all of their interest in New Line? Do they want to do something like those kind of activities? So I worked in that space for quite a while. And then from there, I then transitioned out I had a little bit of a break. And then I was at one of the entertainment law, I think, symposia here in town. There's usually two, one put on by UCLA and one put on by USC. And one of my Warner friends says to me at the USC one, "Hey, Konami's looking for a head of business and legal affairs. Are you still at the studio? What's going on? Because I haven't heard, I haven't seen you at the studio." It's just another one of my studio colleagues. And I said, "No, my deal's up. I'm in this transition. I've got a couple of interviews with company A, B, and C." So he says, well, can I put you in because you understand our business, you understand their business. And didn't you guys try to do a deal with them a number of years ago? We did. And he goes, what happened? I go, they ghosted us. So I found out later, by the way, they ghosted us because it went to somebody who didn't speak English.
Wow, that's
And they just and they didn't like ask, yeah. So that's a little too inside baseball at the
100%,
moment, but
100%.
that's fine. So I go on this interview with Konami, and I thought to myself, this is exciting. This is a subject matter I know peripherally enough to be dangerous, and I know enough about all the other pieces, intellectual property, talent, relationships with the trade association, entertainment software association, the ratings board. And I thought, I'm not a gamer, but okay, so what? Like I wasn't a filmmaker, but I was a studio business and legal affairs lawyer. So
If I'm
okay,
not mistaken, Konami managed the Yu-Gi-Oh cards or that
correct,
brand as well. Okay, oh, that's
great,
a heck
yes.
of a portfolio to have.
And we did, and I worked on a product liability analysis of the Yu-Gi-Oh arcade. There was an arcade game kind of card dispenser product that we put out, and there was a number. I needed some help on the regulatory side, so I got some outside counsel help with me. But the notion of putting an arcade game that dispensed cards was perfectly fine, but they were going to do something called like Yu-Gi-Oh Bucks or something, some
Okay.
kind of. So we had a little money issue to make sure that the money was not really money,
Yeah,
like kind of
yeah,
you know how that goes, right? And so we did this, and I remember getting the schematics for the machine in Japanese, and I sent it to the team in Japan. I said, guys, you got to give this to me in English. My DC lawyer is not going to do this. And if he has to translate them, I got to pay a lot of money. They
100%,
were like,
100%.
and then they were like, well, we don't really have them in English. And I kind of was like, you probably do, but you didn't, because we have Europe, we have, English is not that far off, right? So I ended up telling them, I ended up getting them to send it to me because I told them if I have the team do it at the law firm, I will be forwarding the bill to you in Japan, as opposed to like having it live in my budget.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they
yeah.
were like, and so I probably an hour later, I got a PDF of it in English.
That's nice.
They, right.
That's a heck of a way to
You
get
know,
it, you know?
and that's again to law students, understand that corporate political dynamics are always at play, and you have to learn by being a practitioner and being practical what's important. And what was important was that I not spend an unnecessary amount of money with a partner at a law firm to translate 100 pages of technical schematics when the document already existed in English and somebody just didn't want to get it and give it to me.
Wow.
Explaining, but the part of that was also, to be fair, explaining privilege and explaining confidentiality to people who don't normally deal with that. That became part of my job as a corporate leader, to explain to them, I'm not just trying to save money here. We have to have this, and it stays only the law firm's going to see it, just me and the law firm, because they don't. I think there was some nervousness about it being out in the public, and somebody would replicate the machine, which again is it's a fair fear.
100%.
And so I wanted to make sure and this is what I mean to the students and practitioners, you need to understand the politics and the culture dynamics within your organization, and what is important to them, what are concerns that they have, and why they have them. And part of our job as practitioners is to learn them, anticipate them, and try to cut them off and help them steer through them and navigate them in the best possible way that matches the cultural risk tolerances, as well as the kind of best practices, and keeping your own company looking good to the outside, because you don't want to have the reputation for folding on every issue,
Yeah,
and you also don't want to have the reputation of being difficult on every issue.
exactly.
You have to, it's balance. It's a lot of that is balance.
Wow. There's a lot of different takeaways. I will just say that these are just my notes just off
Uh-oh.
hearing of that. I'm probably not gonna ask that many questions.
No, you could do it. I could do a pop quiz, I think. After, no, it's fine.
100%. So in minute five of no,
No, it's right, exactly.
yeah, I think wow, that is first of all, that's like incredible information and valuable practical advice. I think that what's interesting about your journey is a lot of times some people, it's you work at a law firm for a little bit and then
Hmm.
a couple years and you kind of then move on to a studio. Whereas for you, I think one of the things that I could even just commend you and compliment you for is just your confidence in terms of being able to move into like starting off. I think it was, I just did a search, by the way, it was Disney XD, I think was the channel that it turned into.
There
Uh,
we go. That's
Fox,
right.
yeah. But
Yeah.
working there and then Mattel and then Warner Brothers, that confidence is something that really, really stood out. I'd love to know, sort of, even just going back here, where that kind of comes from, and then sort of your upbringing in terms of sort of being able to have a confidence to walk into a certain room where you're able to close a deal or get things a certain way and develop a solid reputation.
That's a tough question for me to answer, and I'm going to try to do it where I think it lives.
Mhm.
And I think it's a combination of being told no as a kid, like
Wow.
no you can't, no you shouldn't, and me thinking, why? Why is that? And it goes back as far as me learning how to play tennis. When I was not particularly athletic growing up, I struggled with asthma, and I struggled with a lot of kind of physical. I hated being picked last in gym class kind of thing. It really just kind of messed with my head a bit. And then I discovered playing tennis and doing individual sports. All of a sudden I was perfectly fine. Team sports, no good, which is interesting because now I'm quite a good collaborator. But
Yeah, yeah,
back
I was
then,
gonna say.
it's so. But at the beginning, it was really about figuring out what sings to me. What do I want to do? And I didn't know. And I tried a bunch of things, but tennis really was the one thing that I had the right amount of skill and desire to do well in, and I could kind of enjoy the process. Now, I say this as this is where it starts, and then so when I become like you only hit a forehand a certain way, and then I learn a different way, and then you only hit a serve a certain way, and then you hit it a different way. So my ability to build on foundations and expand the skills that I have start to build the confidence. And tennis is a huge confidence game. And you start to learn that as you get good and as you start to compete because you can smell the fear and the anxiety of your opponent on the other side. And if you're putting that out, you better be self-aware enough to turn yourself around. Don't look at your opponent and make sure they're not because you're trained to do that. And so
100%.
I think what helped me a lot was becoming a very good recreational player where
Wow.
I started to win tournaments as singles. I started to pick good doubles partners and win doubles. So the team approach, I was perfectly happy in both spaces. And so that probably was foundational for me. And then I think being told things like, you're never going to get into law school. Okay, well that wasn't the case. You're never going to get on law review. Okay, that's not the case either. So all of a sudden I'm thinking to myself, why should I be having limitations on anything I do?
Wow.
Now, am I 6'4"? Can I hit 130-mile-an-hour serve? Absolutely not. Do I get on a court and tell myself I am 6'4" and I'm going to hit 100%? Now, is it a little
That's
bit
the
of
confidence you
delusion?
gotta have. Yeah.
Right. Is it a little bit of delusion? Of course it is. Is it a little bit of what helps me stand up tall and throw my shoulders back and kind of walk and enter a room like I know what I'm doing? I don't want to enter a room like, look at me, I'm king of the hill. I want to enter the room like I belong there. And I want to feel like I've earned my place, right? So that's kind of where the confidence comes from putting the work in, putting the effort in. Like in law school is a great way. And I'm sure you guys are going to experience this as well. You get a reading list at the beginning of the semester. You have no idea what you're doing. You start reading. You look at case notes. You read footnotes. You're going to extra law review articles, and then all of a sudden it starts to make sense.
That's right.
Like the rule against perpetuity is well, that's a bad example. That never makes. That's always a bit of a bugaboo. Um, your understanding of the First Amendment and
Yeah.
con law starts to gel, and you start to make those distinctions, and I think that gives you the confidence to sit there and say, okay, now I can go apply for a job because I understand the structure. I understand what is necessary, and I think it's preparation, a little bit of nerves, meaning like you have to be a little nervy to do this. And most of us in the legal environment have a good sense of either good confidence or a little bit of bravado,
Hmm.
but a little bit of bravado is okay. And
100%.
it's really okay. And I think it over time it can gel into real confidence. And mine kind of comes from, again, being told. Also, I had a professor at Rutgers who was, I remember this my senior year, and he said something to, there was an honor seminar in history, and he said to the 10 of us in the room, and I will tell you, we were reading books that I will tell you today, I couldn't get my brain through. We were reading like 3 pages at a class because it was so hard and so complicated and
Wow.
so, it was like philosophy coupled with political science coupled with history all in like on a page. And somebody made some comment, and I remember Professor Poor said, "Why would you limit yourself? You're a senior in college. You have no Your life is in unfolding in front of you. Why only be X? Only be Y? Only be Z? Try everything. Try things. Do you eat one kind of food? No. Do you go to one kind of restaurant? No. Try. Don't limit yourself. Don't limit how you see the world." And I remember thinking at the time, thinking, what is he talking about? And then as you get out in the world and you see that people don't look like me, they don't sound like me, they're close enough. And you meet people and you say, you're going to be a film, and I'll fast forward. You're going to be a film lawyer. You're going to be a television lawyer. You're going to be a sports lawyer. You're going to be this. You're going to be that. I got news for you. I'm all of it. I don't want to be one of them. I listen to Professor Bohr, and I don't limit myself. Now, am I better in some subject matters than other? Of course. But do I feel confident enough to speak with a level of intelligence to say what I know and what I don't know? Also, of course. And I think it's important for young practitioners and senior practitioners to take that position, to not be afraid, to not like think, oh, I can't figure out subject matter X or subject matter Y. You can. It just requires a level of discipline and study that may not fit into a day-to-day job, but is kind of important from the standpoint of having enough knowledge to be helpful and also being smart enough to know when to get help, when to get better resources, other resources, so that you're not unnecessarily missing something that could be problematic for your business or your client, depending if you're in a firm or your entity.
One thing that really stood out that I had never thought about after before you said it was that a big studio is like a law firm. And
Yep, that's right.
when you said that, I thought about it for a second. I'm like, wait, there's a litigation department, there's a copyright department, and I'm like,
Yep,
he's right.
that's
Like
right.
that
That's
totally
right.
makes sense. And so with that, I think one of the reasons why I love talking to you is because there's a practical element to a lot of people talk about obviously working extremely hard, being
Yeah.
diligent in terms of the subject matter that you're studying in. But one of the things you emphasize a lot is being able to manage the politics surrounding, whether it's work or being able to manage sort of that relationships and sort of the interpersonal element of it. And I remember you telling me a story a couple months back about, just even your experience at, I don't remember, I think it was Warner Brothers and whatnot, where even just helping cool the tempo was
Yeah.
just a skill in and of itself. And so for up and coming legal professionals, what advice do you have for navigating the corporate world, especially in terms of whether it's new law school graduates, new lawyers? What advice do you have for up and comers in terms of navigating this world that you've seemed to succeed relatively well in?
So thank you for that. What I would say for navigating the corporate world, or even if you're in a firm, the different the array of clients you're going to be asked to represent, is to research them, learn about them. I mean, it sounds so simple, but a Warner Brothers business model and its relationship with its high level talent may look different than the way Paramount treats their high level talent, and the same with Disney, or now I would add in Netflix. Well, Hulu is part of Disney, so
Hulu's
and
ownership is
so
all over the place, but yeah.
yeah, it's yeah. So maybe, or Amazon Prime, right? So
Exactly.
my point being is, if you learning about a company's culture is a huge step one into understanding how to navigate the politics. And I will tell you, I stepped on plenty of rakes that slapped me in the face over the course of my career. And I go back to the first example in the beginning of our conversation about asking for more work. Well, I got more work. I got more work from my boss that he had been kind of backburnering. I got a lot of it done, and because I got a lot of it done, people in the across the organization complimented me and complimented him for giving me the work. Well, that didn't read well with him because
Wow.
that he kind of took that as a negative reflection on him because he didn't get it done. He needed the new junior nobody to do it, right?
Wow. That's a heck of a
So,
dynamic to have because you're
right,
told to work hard, but also like you're
right.
dealing with
So,
that.
right. Now, the reality for me at that time in my career was I knew nothing about it. I thought my job was to do a really good job with the pile and of projects that were handed to me. Now you'd hit the forward button. Now, but
No,
in
no.
those it's okay. In those days, I got a pile of files dropped on my desk saying, "Here you go. You wanted more work? Have no context, no learning, no. This is this kind of deal. This is that kind of deal. This is this kind of thing. That kind of nope. Just figure it out." So the moral of that story is that was a learning experience on both the substance and the politics of what you think is the right thing to do as far as making your boss look good by helping him out by doing this turns into a perception the other way around. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I learned it by stepping on that rake and being, not welcomed the value of my efforts
Wow.
while around the studio was appreciated, was not appreciated by my boss. So you have to kind of, and I'm not saying that's going to happen all the time,
Yeah.
but it is a realistic potential problem that you may not, you may overstep while you're not even thinking you're overstepping. So you navigate by, unfortunately, you got it's trial and error, right?
Wow.
You got to try to be helpful, try to be valuable. I mean, I have much more experience negotiating merchandising deals than some of my colleagues at Tennis Channel. So we did a deal early in my tenure here where one of the colleagues said, we're going to do this deal and this is what the deal looks like. And I looked at the numbers and I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is way too much to the other side. We have the IP. They can't make any of these products without our IP, dot, dot, dot. He came into my office, and this is a young junior marketing person, and screamed at me, don't tell me how to negotiate my deals,
Sorry,
and you don't know what
that's probably like
now I don't take too kindly to that from anyone,
and this
but
person
certainly.
wasn't like let go. Like that's a
Oh,
crazy.
no, 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 no. I let the rant happen. I just let him, okay, leaves my office. I go back to my junior lawyer who also came from a studio. I hired him directly from one of the studios.
Yeah.
And I said, just to make sure I'm not missing anything, what do you think of the numbers here? And he looks at it and he goes, it's ridiculous. This should be half. And we should maybe close a little, halfway in between, right? Doing like negotiating brackets, right? You're familiar with negotiating brackets, Art. Right? Yeah, sorry, little quick joke on
Little
the
100%,
competition.
100%. Yeah,
But they are in real life. They happen in real life.
yeah.
That's also want to make sure I bring that up.
Yeah. That's funny.
So it's the kind of thing where I just thought, and then his boss called and yelled at me. What are you doing? What are you trying to renegotiate this deal? And I'm like, no. I'm like, time out. I'm not renegotiating anything. I'm explaining to so and so that this deal isn't good for us. This deal makes no sense. It is outside of the industry parameters of what an IP rights holder would get for licensing their product, their IP out to the world.
Wow.
Well, this is new business for us. And I'm like, right. And you're going to set a very negative, you're going to set a very low bar for us
100%.
to have any kind of, confidence in our own product. And that's not, you want us to dilute our own trademarks? Like, what is that? And so, we closed the deal at the terrible number. 2 years goes by, company went bankrupt. Just saying, not us. I mean, the
Yeah,
vendor.
yeah, yeah,
And I just
100%.
thought to myself, because I needed the sales report for a trademark dispute,
Yeah.
ironically, and the guy yelled at me. He was gone, and then so I reached out to the company directly, and they were like, "We don't know this company's out of business." And so we tried to get through, like, I don't know how my other digital person got some like generic report from one of the, like, I don't know, maybe it was like Amazon Web Services or something. I don't even know where it came from,
Yeah.
but it was something that was not helpful at all to the dispute conversation I was having. So I just thought to myself, see, there were so many things wrong with this deal, and my getting yelled at just being one of them.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, the navigation comes from experience, right?
Wow.
So you're going to be a better navigator the more you figure out. So now the next deal like this that comes around, I remind folks, you know, let's make sure before we ink anything, we're all comfortable with the numbers. Like
Wow.
that's how I would approach it. Unless I'm in the team doing the numbers up front, then it's a little different. Then I have a different relationship with it. But when I'm supportive in that regard, and again, you have to figure out where some of the lawyers get that ability to be proactive on the business side, like I am, and some don't. Some are just like they want to just get a piece of paper, they want to get some deal terms, document them, argue over indemnification, and move on with their day. That's not me. I like a little more of a complete
100%.
experience. But people, I'm not judging it. I'm just there are yeah, and your people will figure out what they like to do, what they do and don't want to do. But for me as a consumer of my own product here now at Tennis Channel, I'm a little probably unfairly invested in every business decision and every legal decision. So,
That's incredible. I was just shocked at the fact that like somebody would in a professional environment, especially with someone of your tenure that understands that's seen so many different things. But I mean, the world works in mysterious ways, right? So
ego is ego. And
yeah,
sometimes it's, people just, have a thing and they wanna, they don't wanna, sorry, a second.
take your time.
They, yeah, no, they don't want to, they don't want to understand.
100%.
They absolutely choose not to, and they just want to do what they want to do, and they take a very tunnel vision, somewhat, going back to my favorite, one of my other favorite words we've talked about, a limited approach,
Wow.
because if a good corporate citizen wants to take a holistic view of how does this affect not just my side, my day-to-day responsibilities and my deliverables to the organization, but how does it go across? Like, what does another department think about thing X, thing Y? And that matters. And good corporate citizenry requires those of us who get to touch more than one thing, like a business and legal affairs team and an incoming lawyer, to think in terms of not just the one deal in front of you, but how will this one deal affect the rest of the business, positively, negatively, neutrally, or in some other way that we're just not thinking about. But it's our job to think about it and keep it, as part of the analysis when you're doing your job.
100%. That, I mean, the one thing I'm thinking about as you were talking about sort of checking in with multiple departments is the irony of starting off and finding individual sports to be sort of your anchor, but even going into your career, I couldn't have probably think of someone who's more collaborative and more open
Right.
to other people's ideas than you are. So that's that's crazy how life works that way. But one of the things I even just you mentioned, I think earlier on, was this idea that maybe you were like just I think you just described as like, you're hardworking, dangerous, somebody that was able to make an impact. And
Yeah.
for, let's say, the law students out there, I'd love to know what you think the next generation of, and let's just say in this context of entertainment, sports, and media, what does the next generation of the top entertainment, sports, or media lawyer look like in your opinion?
And I'll try to explain it, and my answer will come in probably two ways. And one is on the representation of talent, or on the talent side, and one on the representation of the corporate side where I
That's
live now.
amazing.
The talent side, I would say, and the better talent representatives take this approach, that in as much as they are advocates for their people, their talent, they understand that it is a business, and they understand that businesses have both limitations and upsides, and learning how to be okay with, um, I want $1 billion for this project. Well, my budget is not $1 billion, right? And being rational and reasonable. So I would say from the talent representation standpoint, that's one aspect. From the corporate side, I would say it's not that different. It's the same coin. Be rational, reasonable, and fair. If you want high level talent to do something, don't pay them like they're not high level talent that's going to do something for you, because they're visible enough to the consumer or to the world that you want them to do something for you. Respect that, and be okay with that. And understand that their value is for you as much as it is for them, and to try to treat it as a collaboration. To back to my favorite, kind of, and go in common purpose and common mission. And that's how I would say to kind of think about representation from the standpoint of not just, I need this deal, this deal, this deal, this deal. I need a variety of things for a variety of reasons, and I want them all to be synthesized together for
Wow.
the greater good. And because if you as talent are part of a rising ship, it reflects well on you, and we as the rising ship, it reflects well on us if that talent's part of that visibility profile.
There's a gentleman that I spoke to who works at Loeb and Loeb over in Los Angeles, and he'd mentioned the idea, the difference of sort of doing whether it's working for talent and then working for the leagues and that's a heck of a way to think about it. In terms of like, if you were to talk about it from a more practical side in terms of law school and learning and courses to take or things like that. If you were to say there's certain subject matter that you'd suggest somebody to really specialize in or learn going into their career, if this is the field of choice, what would you kind of recommend?
Sure. This is very easy because I did half of it, not all of it. So the intellectual property courses, whether it's trademark, copyright, or patent, for the entertainment and sports business, unless you're going to go into the tech operational side of it, which is I want to put the patent piece only for that piece of it.
Yeah.
Copyright and trademark, very important.
Mhm.
Very important. So take the IP, whether it's a survey course wherever you are, or trademark in particular. Second thing I would say is employment and labor. You want to understand employment structure because we live in a 50-state system with a federal kind of umbrella that is in some political climates is more active, and in some political climates is less active. And then each state where operations happen have their own set of rules. And then you also want to understand collective bargaining because outside of my sport, most of the other sports have a collective bargaining piece. And having a fundamental understanding of that as a law student puts you one step ahead when you're in the practical in the real world. I think the real version law school is not a real world in the practitioner world. I guess that's a better framing.
And that's incredibly valuable to think about in terms of whether you're a law student right now or going into law school. These courses that or areas of law that I think Peter suggested are really, really valuable. In terms of this is one that I just thought off the cuff right now. If sort of you were in law school right now,
Mm-hmm.
graduating, going into it, would there be anything you would change about your journey, or what you would do now to replicate that kind of the success you've had, or how would you approach things differently if you had graduated law school now?
Okay, so am I do I have the same career that I have right now? Because
Let's just say you had like a clean slate in terms of, you just graduated law school and you had to have sort of an approach for navigating this journey working into entertainment
okay,
and sports law. What would you kind of do?
so I would take the courses that I enjoyed, and I would try to and I would assume because I enjoyed them, I got better grades in them,
Yeah, yeah,
and I would try to frame those out in my resume in my summary of um, law school graduate with a focus on law X, law Y, law Z, but I would also keep it loose and open so that I could reframe them for each job that I see. Meaning, if I see a job at a talent agency, law school graduate with a focus on employment and collective bargaining, um, sports management, entertain, whatever. If there's a survey courses like entertainment law or sports law, those are fine. Those are definitely take those to make sure you like what you're learning. But remember, there's a lot of that comes from certainly in my day. Entertainment law was about negotiating and drafting, not so much about litigation.
yeah.
Um, and I don't know if that's the same now, but sports law tends to be a little bit more about things like on the litigation side, the NIL conversation,
Right.
NCAA's relationship with the world, collective bargaining at the league level, all of the kind of more classic lawyering parts versus like, oh, team X traded player Y for this amount of money,
Yeah.
salary caps. So, learning about salary caps and stuff is it's important information. So the sooner you learn that, the better, if that's the area you want to go to.
Would be the first piece of advice that you've received, whether it's throughout your career, even throughout your life for that matter, that you feel has either shaped your philosophy or that keeps you grounded, and that's helped you throughout your entire career?
It's helped keep me
Bit of a loaded
grounded.
question.
Yeah, I got to think, what's kept me grounded? Oh, okay. What's the thing that has kept me grounded throughout my career? My ability to every so often put my professional hat, take my professional hat off, get on a tennis court and hit tennis balls. That grounds me for the very simple reason that you have no choice but to watch the ball.
Wow.
And the only thing that matters when you are on that tennis court is the ball. Now I'm simplifying because this is when I get on the court, I can have all the anxiety of the day. I could be worried about a deal. I could be worried, did I say the wrong thing? Did I, is my boss going to fire me? Should I fire my team? Should I hire more people? Should I, all whatever the human angst that lives in your head, and that works. You could be chatting with the person you're hitting with, and then all of a sudden the ball comes, and you got to hit the ball. The only thing that matters is that ball, and I can't emphasize enough how that simple act of getting in position, moving your feet, swinging to hit the ball, just everything else has to go away. And because of that, you can kind of find a certain sense of single focus that most of us don't get. Well, certainly most lawyers don't get it unless they have to go find it. And certainly law students trying to juggle everything from the substantive learning bar exam to, where am I working? There's always going to be a bit of that floating in your head. But what the grounding piece for me is hitting a tennis ball.
That's a heck of a way to put it. And if you don't mind, Peter, if at all there's ever a point where I think I'll go out of my way. That was the greatest integration of Wimbledon, even going into Sunday I'd ever seen. Because but you're absolutely right in terms of maybe having that sport and even just the philosophy of
Yeah.
sometimes life just comes at you and all you got to do is just focus and be
Right.
dialed in on that. The final question that I tend to ask most of my guests, Risa, as of late, is what is something that you're just incredibly grateful for throughout your life and something that you're kind of like have cherished deeply? I guess even whether it could be tennis, it could be anything else. But is there anything specifically that you're either grateful for or even very fond of? Not just thinking about your career.
Wow. I appreciate the loaded questions here.
So, take your time.
I want to say that tennis, because it's been foundational for me in a different, and it's served different purposes for me in different parts of my life. That's one aspect, and I think my curiosity is the other. My curiosity and something that has been foundational is Professor Poor's advice: never to limit yourself. To kind of that, coupled with my curiosity, has had me study a number of foreign languages, have a certain career path that through diplomacy and trade that didn't happen, and so I ended up in diplomacy and trade in a sport that has a global focus to it, but it's a slightly different pathway, if you will. And at the end of the day, that curiosity and that refusal to to allow limits to run my life is probably what keeps me going and keeps me motivated and interested in learning and continuing to learn and continuing to be better. I take the position when I play tennis, when I'm getting a lesson, that I want to be better at the end of the lesson than I was at the beginning, even if it's incremental. Even if I'm asked to hit 10 balls in a row and I hit 10, now I want to hit 20. And then if I'm asked to hit 10 topspin backhands, they all have to spin a certain number of rotations. When I have to hit drop shots up to a certain, whatever the task I'm asked to do, I want to do it as well today, but then better the next time. So it's the constant need to not be limited, for my curiosity and for improvement.
But I'll say just to end off here, I'd say that, your passion for the game, not only for in terms of just the passion for tennis, but passion for what you do in the entertainment, sports, and media space. And even your willingness to come on here in such a busy time within the tennis world is something that I really appreciate, and I'm sure everyone else listening to this really appreciates. Your journey, your hard work, dedication, even different advice you'd give is certainly invaluable. So really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, Mo, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to have a conversation and to share my experiences in the hopes that folks can learn from it and take advantage of it and maybe do something differently and teach me something. So I appreciate the opportunity to have that to speak today. So thank you for that.
100%. Thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate you
All
taking.
right. Talk soon.